All right, so there are just a couple of more key terms that I want to cover before we get into our study of literature. And the last couple of ones, well, the first one is disillusionment. And this is a term that we can use to apply to the sort of transformation that occurs in young men. It is often represented in war literature, where we have very idealistic young men who have fantasies about becoming war heroes, about becoming heroes and being brave and showing how accomplished they are, and really sort of proving themselves as men. And then a moment, their experience falls short of that. So there is kind of this transformation where they gain knowledge or experience that knocks them off their pedestal, kind of, we could say it in that way. So men, these sort of almost naive, innocent boys and men enlist in the army, wanting to prove themselves as men, and then the reality is very sort of soul crushing, soul destroying, and those fantasies of hegemonic masculinity and bravery and this glorified version of dying, even the noble death in war, all of these sort of lies or fantasies fall apart in a moment of disillusion. And the truth is, war is full of suffering, full of hardship, and often, just it becomes a kind of senseless enterprise where you're surrounded by death. And it becomes, for many men and for many soldiers in general, men and women, a moment or something that is very disillusioning, and all your idealistic views of the world and of yourself can fall apart when faced with the horrors of warfare. So disillusionment is this process of breaking apart one's ideals or fantasies and faced with reality. So the moment when you're faced with realities of suffering and hardship and the senseless deaths of your fellow soldiers and even soldiers on the other side, it can be disillusioning for many soldiers. And they can become disillusioned with either, the political institutes that began the war, so the imperialistic men in charge, the political leaders who instigated the war in the first place. They might become disillusioned with the military hierarchy, generals who are giving commands but who are not on the front lines. They might become disillusioned with the medical authorities who call them sick or insane when they express any kind of dissent against their military position. Or soldiers might become disillusioned with culture in general, patriarchal norms and ideals that promote this masculine, hegemonic masculine ideal, and when reality does not sort of live up to that idealized notion. There might also be disillusionment with, civilians as a whole, society as a whole, as, all of us are in a way complicit to promoting and celebrating these norms, these cultural values that promote and value kind of hegemonic masculinity and the soldiers' heroism and duty. So in many ways, disillusionment will become a theme throughout many of the stories that we'll be reading. Lastly, I want to also address this important theme that will be present in many of the texts that we'll read, and I'm referring it to sort of sexual warfare, but it is the sort of intimate connection between the patriarchal military system and the presence of sexual violence. These two things are linked and will be connected in many of the stories we'll be reading. So for example, in Timothy Finley's The Wars, or Chang Rei Lee's A Just Your Life, there is a connection between the military system and the presence of sexual violence in the text. And sexual violence can feature in the military system in many different sort of iterations. In The Invisible War, a documentary, they detailed how the military sort of patriarchal system often sort of targeted female soldiers, and those female soldiers were often faced with very sort of hostile conditions in their training and on the front lines. There's multiple cases of sexual assault, harassment, and rape within the military community against men and women. So it's not, it's both sort of part of the patriarchal homosocial community of the military. And in wartime, sexual violence can also be used as a weapon against the enemy. So military occupation of another country often goes alongside using sexual violence as a weapon of war. So the enemy can be targeted for sexual assault and rape in particular. Women can be sort of kidnapped or forced into prostitution, and sexual violence is also tied to attempts at genocide. So when women are abused and raped, subsequent generations are sort of can be viewed as being sort of so it can be used as a kind of way of attacking or degrading the opposing army by disrespecting and even impregnating the women of your enemy. You are sort of polluting the ethnic lines of that community, and in this way it sort of ties into any sort of strategies of genocide. So on multiple levels, sexual warfare is a part of our discussion of the lines between gender and the military system. So it will be a part of our discussion in the upcoming weeks as we discuss the literature in this class. Okay, so that's all we need to cover for our discussion of military masculinity. These themes and ideas will be repeated over and over again as we start looking at our class texts. So feel free to bring in some of these key terms when you're discussing the literature in the forums and in your papers. Take notes and review some of these concepts, and I've included some of my resources on the side, so if you're interested in looking more closely at some of the gender key terms and ideas, feel free to do some extra reading on the side. All right, thank you.